The grand doors of the Hargrove estate swung open with a soft whoosh, the sound reverberating through the cavernous foyer as Jonathan Hargrove stepped inside, his leather briefcase thudding against the polished marble floor with a weight that mirrored the exhaustion etched into his sharp features. A billionaire tech mogul whose days were consumed by global mergers and boardroom battles, yet whose heart had been hollowed out since the sudden loss of his wife Elena 2 years prior in a devastating car crash that left their sprawling mansion a mausoleum of memories, where he now raised their 4-year-old daughter Lily with a distant oversight, delegating her care to a parade of nannies and staff who maintained the illusion of a functioning home while he buried himself in work to escape the gnawing grief that threatened to unravel him. He had cut his latest international trip short, driven by an inexplicable yearning to surprise Lily with an early return, imagining her bright eyes lighting up as he swept her into his arms, a fleeting hope to reclaim some semblance of fatherhood amid the chaos of his empire. And as he loosened his silk tie, the fabric slipping through his fingers like a sigh of relief, he inhaled the familiar scents of lavender polish and freshly pressed linens that wafted through the air, a testament to the meticulous order imposed by his estate manager, Reginald, who ensured the household ran like a well-oiled machine, though today Jonathan sought something more, the unscripted joy of a child's laughter to pierce the silence that had settled over the estate like a heavy shroud. Dropping his briefcase by the base of the grand staircase, its dark wood gleaming under the chandelier's crystal light, he ascended the steps with a quiet determination, his Italian loafers sinking into the plush runner that muffled his approach, drawn upward by a faint splashing sound and a soft, melodic hum drifting from the bathroom adjacent to Lily's nursery, a hum that was neither the nanny's brisk efficiency nor the housekeeper's distracted chatter, but something warmer, more intimate, like a lullaby carried on a gentle breeze, stirring a mix of curiosity and an instinctive unease that prickled at the back of his neck. Pushing the door open with a cautious hand, Jonathan froze, his breath catching in his throat as if the air had been stolen from the room. His eyes widening at the sight before him. There, kneeling beside the antique clawfoot tub with its intricate brass fittings catching the soft glow of the overhead light, was Aisha Reynolds, the reserved black maid he had hired 6 months ago on Reginald's quiet recommendation, her uniform sleeves rolled up to reveal strong arms glistening with water droplets, her kinky hair tied back in a practical bun that swayed slightly with her movements, and in her hands a colorful plastic pitcher from which she was carefully pouring lukewarm water over Lily's soapy curls, rinsing them with a tenderness that seemed almost sacred, her voice low and soothing as she murmured, "There we go, little flower, all clean now," while Lily, his precious daughter with her mother's radiant smile and his own stubborn chin, giggled uncontrollably, her tiny hands clapping the bubbly surface to send sprays of foam flying, her eyes sparkling with pure delight as she looked up at Aisha with unreserved trust, babbling, "More, Aisha, more!" as if this were a cherished ritual between them, rather than an act by an employee stepping beyond her assigned role. Jonathan's mind reeled, a surge of protective rage igniting like a wildfire through dry brush, his chest tightening with a visceral reaction. Who was this woman to presume such intimacy, to touch his child with a mother's care, when her duties were clearly delineated to dust the chandeliers, launder the linens, and maintain the pristine order of the mansion, not to encroach upon the sacred domain of parenthood that he guarded jealously, especially since Elena's death had left him paranoid about anyone filling the void he struggled to occupy. Fearing they might replace the memories he clung to with their own presence, a fear that now exploded into fury as he stepped forward, his voice thundering through the steam-filled room. "What the hell are you doing?" The words booming like a crack of lightning, shattering the peaceful bubble and causing Aisha to jolt upright, the pitcher slipping from her grasp and clattering into the tub with a splash that sent water cascading over the edge onto the tiled floor, her dark eyes widening in shock as she turned to face him, rising swiftly to her feet with a grace that belied the sudden tension coiling in her muscles. Lily's laughter dissolved into a startled cry, her small face crumpling in confusion as she reached out for Aisha, whimpering, "No, Daddy, no!" her tiny arms flailing in the water. And Jonathan, his face flushed with anger, strode forward without hesitation, snatching Lily from the tub with one arm, wrapping her in a fluffy towel despite her protests, the sudden movement making the girl wail louder as she clung to his shirt with wet fists, water dripping down his pristine suit, her eyes pleading back toward Aisha as she cried, "Aisha, help! Aisha!" the plea piercing him like a dagger, but he held firm, glaring at the maid over his daughter's head with a fury that masked the vulnerability bubbling beneath. Aisha recovered with remarkable composure, her expression flickering with hurt for just an instant before she masked it with a calm resolve, wrapping the towel more securely around Lily and lifting her from the water with practiced care. Holding the child close for a brief moment, as if to offer reassurance before extending her toward him, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Mr. Hargrove, I apologize for the surprise. Lily was overheating after playing in the sun all morning. The nanny called in sick earlier, and no one else was available to help. So I drew a lukewarm bath to cool her down. She's been much better since. Her temperature's dropped. I would never put her at risk. I only wanted to keep her comfortable." But Jonathan's ears were deaf to her explanation, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Negligence, overreach, a violation of the boundaries he had so carefully erected around his daughter's life, his paternal instincts overriding any semblance of reason as he barked, "You thought? You're not paid to think about my daughter's care. You're paid to clean, to stay in your lane, not to play mother when I'm not here. Get your things and get out. And if I find out this was anything more than a reckless mistake, I'll ensure you never work in this city again." His words laced with a venom that surprised even himself, the accusation hanging heavy in the steamy air as Lily's wails intensified, her small body shivering in his arms as she reached back toward Aisha with desperate whimpers. "Aisha, help!" cutting through him like a blade. Aisha's eyes lowered, a shadow of pain crossing her face before she nodded silently, her voice soft and devoid of defiance, as she replied, "As you say, sir, but please dry her off completely and check her temperature. She might need a sippy cup of electrolyte water to stay hydrated." Her concern for the child overriding any personal hurt as she turned and left the bathroom, her footsteps fading down the hall with a quiet dignity that left an unsettling silence in her wake, the steam dissipating like his initial fury, replaced by a gnawing doubt as Lily's sobs soaked his shirt, her fever seeming to rise again in the emotional turmoil, her repeated calls for Aisha bath, twisting the knife deeper, forcing him to confront the bond she had formed with the maid in his prolonged absences, a bond he hadn't noticed amid his relentless pursuit of corporate dominance. He dried Lily hastily, his large hands fumbling with the towel in his haste, dressing her in pajamas that felt foreign in his grasp, rocking her in the nursery armchair as he whispered shushing sounds and murmured apologies. But nothing calmed her, her cries escalating as the fever spiked, her little fists pushing against him as she murmured, "Aisha," between hiccups, and as he paced the room with her in his arms, he couldn't shake the image of Aisha's gentle pore, the way Lily had relaxed under her care, the trust that had been evident in every splash and giggle, a trust he hadn't earned in his absences, buried as he was in work, to avoid the grief that threatened to consume him. Calls to the nanny confirmed the sudden illness, and inquiries to the staff painted Aisha in a light he hadn't seen. How she often sang to Lily during dusting, how the child sought her out for hugs when upset, small acts of kindness that went beyond her duties, born from a genuine heart rather than obligation, tales of her reading picture books on her breaks or preparing special snacks when Lily was picky, and as night deepened, the mansion's opulence felt mocking, its empty rooms amplifying his isolation, the weight of his hasty decision pressing like a stone on his chest as he realized his fear had blinded him to a truth he couldn't ignore. When Lily woke feverish once more, her cries unrelenting and her little arms reaching toward the door with a plaintive, "Aisha," Jonathan's pride shattered driving him into the night toward the address in Aisha's file, a modest apartment in a rundown neighborhood where lights flickered uncertainly, knocking desperately on doors until he found hers, his voice breaking as he pleaded through the threshold. "I was wrong. Lily needs you. Please come back." His words raw with regret, and when Aisha opened the door, her eyes wary but compassionate, she grabbed her coat without a word, stepping into the car for the silent drive home, where she tended to the child with the same gentle efficiency, Lily calming instantly in her arms as Aisha hummed softly, checking her temperature with the back of her hand and administering medicine with quiet words. Her presence a balm that soothed the child where Jonathan's efforts had failed. As dawn broke over the estate, casting golden beams through the tall windows and illuminating the polished hardwood floors, Jonathan watched from the doorway, his heart aching with a mix of gratitude and shame as Lily nestled into Aisha's embrace, her sobs fading into peaceful sleep. And in that moment, he realized his fear had blinded him to a truth. Aisha wasn't an intruder. She was the missing piece in a home fractured by loss. And with a humble whisper, "Stay as her caregiver. I need you too." The first fragile bridge of trust was built, setting the stage for alliances yet to unfold as the mansion stirred with the promise of a new beginning, its silence no longer cold but charged with the possibility of healing, a possibility born from the quiet strength of a woman he had nearly cast aside in his moment of blind panic. With Lena rehired not just as a maid but elevated to the role of Emma's primary caregiver, the Hargrove mansion underwent a subtle metamorphosis, like a long-dormant garden stirring to life under the first rays of spring sun, mornings now alive with the aroma of oatmeal simmering on the stove, and Emma's delighted squeals as Lena braided her hair with colorful ribbons she had bought from her own modest salary, afternoons filled with impromptu picnics in the sun-dappled conservatory where Lena taught the child simple rhymes from her grandmother's stories, tales of faraway lands and resilient heroes that made Emma's eyes widen with wonder, and evenings winding down with bedtime routines where Lena's voice wove lullabies like threads of silk, easing the girl into sleep with a gentleness that Alexander observed from the shadows of the hallway, his heart clenching with a mix of gratitude and an unfamiliar vulnerability as he realized how seamlessly Lena had integrated into their lives, her presence a steady anchor in the turbulent sea of his grief-stricken existence. Yet, this newfound harmony was not without its undercurrents of discord, whispers slithering through the staff quarters like vines creeping up ancient walls, Marla the longtime housekeeper muttering in the pantry about that girl thinking she's lady of the manor, her words laced with a bitterness born of jealousy and unspoken prejudices, how Aisha's elevation blurred the rigid lines of class and role that had defined the household for decades. Lines Marla clung to like lifelines in a world where her own position felt increasingly precarious under Alexander's distracted oversight. And soon the gossip spread. Subtle at first, a cold shoulder in the laundry room, a pointed glance during meals, but escalating into anonymous notes slipped under Alexander's study door, scrawled in shaky handwriting. "She's too close, watch your back," prompting him to confront the staff in a tense meeting in the formal dining room, his voice booming like thunder as he demanded loyalty or resignation, firing Marla on the spot when she defiantly claimed it's inappropriate for someone like her to play mother, her words hanging heavy with implication, revealing the racial undertones that simmered beneath the surface. Assumptions about Aisha's intentions colored by stereotypes that Alexander now saw for the poison they were, vowing to root them out as he began to question his own blind spots, the privileges that had shielded him from such biases, until they threatened the fragile peace he was building. In the quiet hours after such confrontations, Alexander found himself drawn to Aisha's company, their conversations evolving from polite exchanges about Emma's day to deeper revelations shared over late-night teas in the kitchen, where Aisha opened up about her interrupted dreams of nursing school, derailed by her brother's descent into a world of debts and dangers that forced her to testify against a ruthless lender, changing her name and fleeing across states to escape retaliation, her voice steady but eyes distant as she described the loneliness of survival. "I've learned to be invisible, it's safer that way." And Alexander, moved by her resilience, shared his own scars, the guilt of being absent during Elena's final illness, the boardroom battles that had consumed him while she faded, leaving him to raise Lily in a home haunted by what-ifs, their vulnerabilities intertwining like vines on a trellis, fostering a trust that bloomed unexpectedly one evening in the library, where a shared laugh over Emma's latest drawing led to a lingering gaze, a brush of hands, and a kiss that tasted of tentative hope, soft and searching, as if both were testing waters they hadn't dared approach before. Aisha pulling back with a whisper, "This could complicate everything." But Alexander replying, "Or it could make everything right," their connection deepening amid the scent of old books and flickering candlelight. But peace was fleeting. As the anonymous notes turned menacing, "She brings danger, get rid before it's too late," prompting Alexander to hire a private investigator who uncovered fragments of Aisha's past, a court record under her old name, a loan shark named Victor Kane, who had vowed revenge for her testimony that sent him to prison, now free and potentially circling like a shark sensing blood. And when Alexander confronted Aisha in the garden under a canopy of blooming roses, her eyes filled with tears as she admitted, "I didn't tell you because I thought you'd see me as a liability, someone to cast aside like before." But he pulled her close. "You're not a liability, you're my strength. And we'll face this together," their bond solidifying in the face of threat, as whispers gave way to actionable plans, security upgrades transforming the mansion into a fortress. Though the tension mounted with each passing day, culminating in a chilling call from an unknown number, Victor's voice rasping through the line, "She owes me and I'll collect from all of you," sending chills down Alexander's spine as he realized the danger was no longer abstract but imminent, forcing him to prepare for a confrontation that would test not just his wealth, but his willingness to protect the family he had only recently recognized as his own. The chapter closing on a note of uneasy anticipation as the sun set over the estate, shadows lengthening like warnings of the storm to come. Shadows unveiled and futures forged began not with a dramatic flourish, but with the subtle intensification of threats that had lingered like storm clouds on the horizon, the anonymous notes escalating from vague warnings to explicit demands, slipped under doors or left in mailboxes. "Pay what you owe," or "the girl pays," scrawled in jagged letters that made Aisha's hands tremble as she showed them to Alexander in the dim light of his study, her voice steady but her eyes betraying the fear she had long buried. The fear of Victor Kane, the loan shark whose grip on her past had never fully loosened, his release from prison a ticking bomb she had hoped would never detonate. But now it was clear he had tracked her down, using her new life as leverage in a game of revenge for the testimony that had sent him away after her brother's fatal entanglement in his web of debts and desperation, a web that had forced Aisha to flee, change her name, and rebuild in the shadows, only to find those shadows creeping back as surveillance cameras captured glimpses of shadowy figures near the estate gates, prompting Alexander to fortify the mansion with state-of-the-art alarms, motion sensors, and round-the-clock guards, transforming their home into a gilded cage where every creak of the floorboards set nerves on edge. Yet amid this siege, their bond deepened like roots seeking water in parched soil, late-night strategy sessions in the library where Alexander pored over investigator reports while Aisha shared fragments of her history she had long suppressed, her brother's laughter echoing in memories tainted by his downfall. The loan that was meant to save him turning into a noose that strangled her freedom. And Alexander, listening with a compassion he hadn't known he possessed, vowing, "We'll end this not just for us, but for the life we're building," his words a anchor in the turmoil as they navigated the emotional minefield. Emma's innocent questions about why Daddy's worried piercing their hearts, forcing them to shield her with stories of adventure rather than the grim reality closing in. The climax erupted on a rain-lashed night when the power cut plunged the estate into darkness, alarms silenced by a severed line, and Alexander awoke to the crash of breaking glass downstairs, his heart pounding as he grabbed the baseball bat from under the bed and whispered to Aisha, "Stay with Emma, lock the nursery." But she refused. "We're in this together," scooping the sleeping child into her arms as they moved silently through the blacked-out halls, the storm outside mirroring the chaos within. Lightning flashes illuminating a figure in the foyer, Victor Kane, older and scarred from prison but still radiating menace, crowbar in hand as he snarled, "Where's the money, girl? You thought you could hide forever?" His voice a gravelly echo of nightmares Aisha had fled, and Alexander stepped forward, bat raised. "Get out now!" But Kane lunged, the crowbar swinging in a deadly arc that Alexander dodged, shoving him back into a console table that shattered under the impact. Glass scattering like stars on the floor as Aisha, shielding Emma, dialed emergency services with shaking fingers, the child's whimpers muffled against her chest. "It's okay, baby. We're safe." Though fear clawed at her throat, the struggle intensified. Alexander grappling with Kane in the dark, punches landing with grunts and thuds, furniture toppling as Reginald burst in from the staff quarters, tackling Kane from behind and pinning him until sirens wailed in the distance. Police flooding the scene with flashlights and commands, cuffing the intruder who spat curses at Aisha. "This ain't over," but she stood tall, meeting his gaze. "It is for me, I'm done running," her voice breaking the last chain of her past as he was dragged away. The power flickering back on to reveal the wreckage, but also the unbreakable unit they had become, Emma clinging to both as the night gave way to dawn. In the aftermath, healing unfolded like petals unfurling under sunlight, charges pressed against Kane ensuring his return to prison, the threats silenced as Aisha testified once more, this time with Alexander's support, turning her vulnerability into victory. And as media swirled with headlines of the Billionaire's midnight siege, Alexander used the spotlight to announce his partial retirement from Hargrove Tech, redirecting resources to philanthropy. While Aisha, empowered by the ordeal, proposed a foundation for women escaping cycles of debt and abuse. Rooted Resilience, named for the strength that grows from adversity. Launching it with a gala, where she spoke not as a victim but a visionary, donors flocking to the cause as her story inspired waves of support, transforming whispers of scandal into echoes of admiration. Family dynamics evolved too. Victoria Hargrove returning not with disdain but a tentative olive branch, admitting in the garden under blooming roses, "I was wrong, fear blinded me, as it did you, but seeing how you've protected each other, I see the legacy isn't in wealth, it's in love." Her words mending bridges as she bonded with Emma over tea parties, the estate filling with laughter that drowned out past tensions. Romance blossomed fully, Alexander proposing a private vow exchange in the conservatory amid Elena's favorite orchids. "I promise to honor your past as part of our future," he murmured, slipping a ring onto her finger etched with intertwined vines, Aisha replying, "And I promise to grow with you, roots deep and branches wide," their kiss sealing a union born from fire. Emma clapping as flower girl in a dress she chose herself, the ceremony intimate with Reginald as witness, marking not an end but a flourishing. Years blurred into milestones, the foundation expanding nationwide. Aisha's speeches drawing crowds. Alexander's memoir Unseen Bonds, chronicling their journey and topping charts. Emma thriving with two parents' love, calling Aisha mom without hesitation. The family traveling to Aisha's hometown for closure, scattering her brother's ashes in a place of peace, and in quiet evenings, they sat in the garden watching sunsets, hands entwined, knowing shadows had been unveiled only to reveal the light within, futures forged not in spite of pain but because of it, a testament to resilience that echoed beyond their walls, inspiring others to bloom where they were planted.